In breaking news, the ongoing tensions between South Africa and the US have now surged to boiling point. Washington has threatened consequences over what it deems as slights against its officials. It's accusing Pretoria of blocking its officials from rendering aid to Afrikaners. The US says, quote, it will not tolerate such behavior. The row follows a raid on a non-governmental US refugee processing center in Johannesburg earlier this week. 7 Kenyans have since been deported for working at the center illegally. They did not have work permits.
The United States has escalated tensions with South Africa, accusing its government of harassing and doxing people involved in relocating white Afrikaners. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio made the accusation on Thursday, a day after South Africa expelled 7 Kenyan nationals who had been brought in with U.S. support to help process Afrikaner relocations. Rubio claimed that U.S. nationals were briefly detained during the incident and that their passport details were leaked online. He called this an unacceptable act that put lives at risk and warned there would be severe consequences if those responsible were not.
South Africa's decision to dismiss and reduce the presence of United States personnel from specific government-linked and diplomatic-adjacent roles has sent ripples through diplomatic circles in Washington and beyond. While officially framed as an administrative and compliance-based action rooted in domestic policy enforcement, the move has been widely interpreted as a signal of Pretoria's evolving foreign policy posture and its growing willingness to assert autonomy in its dealings with global powers. For decades, South Africa and the United States have maintained a complex but generally cooperative relationship. Economic ties, security cooperation, development programs, and institutional partnerships have underpinned bilateral engagements since the end of apartheid. U.S. agencies and affiliated staff have operated across various sectors in South Africa, including public health, education, research, development assistance, and governance support. These arrangements, while mutually beneficial in many respects, have also drawn scrutiny within South Africa regarding sovereignty, accountability, and local capacity building. The recent dismissals occurred against a backdrop of heightened diplomatic sensitivity. South Africa has increasingly pursued a non-aligned foreign policy stance, resisting pressure to fully align with Western positions on global conflicts and geopolitical rivalries. Pretoria's participation in BRICS, its deepening ties with China and Russia, and its vocal criticism of what it views as selective enforcement of international norms have strained relations with Washington in recent years. According to South African officials, the action was driven by internal reviews of compliance with labor regulations, visa frameworks, and operational mandates governing foreign personnel working within state-linked institutions. Authorities emphasized that the move was not an expulsion but a recalibration, aimed at ensuring that all foreign staff operate strictly within South African law and policy guidelines. Nonetheless, the timing and scope of the dismissals caught U.S. officials off guard. In Washington, the response was measured but unmistakably concerned. U.S. policymakers expressed surprise at the lack of advance consultation, noting that long-standing cooperation frameworks typically involve dialogue before significant personnel changes. Behind closed doors, the move has been interpreted as part of a broader trend in which South Africa is reassessing the depth and nature of Western institutional presence within its borders. The decision also reflects domestic political dynamics within South Africa. Public discourse has increasingly questioned the extent of foreign influence in national policy spaces, particularly in sectors such as health funding, development aid, and governance reform. Critics argue that over-reliance on foreign personnel can undermine local expertise and distort national priorities. Supporters of the government's action view it as a necessary step towards strengthening domestic capacity and reaffirming sovereignty. Economically, the move carries symbolic weight more than immediate material impact. However, symbolism matters in diplomacy. By asserting control over foreign staffing arrangements, South Africa signals that partnerships must evolve on terms that reflect changing national interests. This stance resonates with broader Global South sentiments, where governments are seeking more balanced relationships that move beyond donor-recipient dynamics. The dismissals also intersect with shifting global power structures. As competition between major powers intensifies, middle powers like South Africa are navigating a complex landscape where neutrality and strategic flexibility are increasingly valuable. Pretoria's actions suggest a deliberate effort to avoid being perceived as aligned too closely with any single bloc, particularly at a time when pressure to choose sides is mounting. For the United States, the episode underscores the challenges of maintaining influence in a world where traditional partners are asserting greater independence. Washington's development and diplomatic models, once largely uncontested, now face scrutiny from governments seeking alternatives. South Africa's move, while limited in scope, contributes to a growing pattern of recalibration across Africa and other regions. The broader implications extend beyond bilateral relations. Other African governments are watching closely, assessing how South Africa navigates the fallout and whether similar measures could be implemented elsewhere. The outcome may influence how foreign personnel arrangements are structured across the continent, potentially leading to greater emphasis on local hiring and capacity transfer. At the same time, both Pretoria and Washington have incentives to prevent escalation. The United States remains a significant trade partner and investor, while South Africa benefits from access to U.S. markets and technology. Diplomatic channels remain open, and both sides have emphasized the importance of continued cooperation despite disagreements. Ultimately, the dismissals highlight a transition rather than a rupture. South Africa is redefining the terms of engagement with global partners, asserting that cooperation must align with domestic priorities and legal frameworks. For Washington, the message is clear: influence can no longer be assumed, and partnership requires adaptation to a multipolar world. As the situation unfolds, the focus will be on whether dialogue can restore predictability and trust, or whether this episode marks the beginning of a more assertive phase in South Africa's foreign policy. What is certain is that the action has challenged assumptions, disrupted routines, and signaled that even long-standing relationships are subject to renegotiation.
You've been watching Echoes of Africa, where every story carries the sound of tomorrow. If this moved you, subscribe now, like, and share so Africa's voice never fades into silence.